Alright, so I've been keeping animals my whole life. It's actually been years since I tried having a fish tank, so I decided to set one up. Started pretty small with a 5-gallon tank, and like with any hobby, it just exploded from there. I had a lot of fun with it. I wanted to do a planted aquarium, I knew that, but I didn't know too much about growing the plants themselves. So right here you can see the 5-gallon aquarium. I have a bed of fish in there, and I've got an exterior plant, a pothos, with just the root system dipped into the water. That was helping to pull all the bad stuff out of the water. And external plants like that actually feed a lot heavier than plants inside the water or inside the aquarium. You can see I've also got a little bit of parrot's feather in there. That is something that I collected from somebody's pond. Not advisable mixing outside stuff with your aquarium, but this was basically all an experiment. You can see here, week 5, I've added a few things. The filter was an old turtle filter, and I put some lava rock on top with some moss, which I actually thought was pretty cool, but it didn't ultimately work out that well. You can see I've introduced some Neocaridina shrimp, some cherry shrimp here. These are the yellow variety. I thought they looked really good with the black sand and the black background. And I needed a cleanup crew, to eat all the uneaten fish food and stuff like that. Unfortunately, at this point, the bed of fish had gotten itself stuck behind the filter and sadly passed away. So that was unfortunate, but it was a lesson to me that I needed to get a proper filter in the aquarium. This right here is a mystery snail, or sometimes referred to as an apple snail. And again, just part of the cleanup crew. You can see the little shrimp here just eating a piece of food, scavenging around the bottom. The shrimp will also eat biofilm, which is like the product of rotting wood. So they'll keep your stuff nice and clean in there. This is week 6. I upgraded to a 15-gallon aquarium. I knew that I wanted to put some more fish in there. Started off with these black mollies, which ended up being a really good fish because they clean all the algae off the plants. I also put in some Corydoras, as you just saw. And here we have week 10. Things were finally starting to establish. I had a lot of trouble with the plants that I was putting into these aquariums. So basically the plants that you buy at the aquarium shop, those come from a wholesaler, and those plants are actually grown above water. So when you take these home and you put them completely submerged in your aquarium, they have to unfortunately go through a process which can take some time, and most of the plant will die off. You can cut the tops off and replant them, and they will do just fine. So I was messing with this aquarium so much, I finally decided to add another aquarium just to keep myself from changing them up too much. And I moved the shrimp over to what I call this one, the shrimp tank. You can see it's got a different substrate. The fish tank on the left, I had added aqua soil in there. And you can see my little shrimpies are loving it. This right here is a buried shrimp. That means the eggs have been fertilized and have switched from the back of the female shrimp to the underside of the belly there. This is a good close-up shot. You can see her swirling around those little eggs. She's doing that to just keep good circulation on them so they don't go bad. And there goes the snail. Alright guys, I'm really excited about today. I got a package in the mail from Modern Aquarium. We got some red root floater. Found the product online. Within a few days they fulfilled the order, and then it shipped within, I think, like 24 or 48 hours. So $24 in total. That includes the shipping and the plant material. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and unbox this and get it in the aquarium. Pretty excited. Pretty excited. So the red root floater is going to provide a lot of water filtration. The floating roots and the floating plants will just suck everything right out of the water column. And then our rooted plants can worry about the stuff in the substrate, but this is gonna go in the shrimp tank. Keep that water nice and clean. I think this is like week 13 on the tanks, and I don't do a lot of water changes on the shrimp tank. Here we go. Here's our little 4-ounce cup. Good experience, modern aquarium. Shipping was fast. It's good that it was time sensitive because this stuff has to get to light and back in the water, so. There we go, little deli cup. Red root floater portion cup, floating. Imagine that. Alright, that's looking pretty good. So like I said, the plan is to put all of this in the shrimp tank, and I think it'll do really well there. But it's looking pretty good. Alright, let's go get it in the tank. Got it in our little deli cup right here. I'm going to start by just taking a little bit of it in my hands and just dropping it down in the water and seeing how it goes. You can see there's long root systems on it, so the part that floats will turn upright and the roots will point down towards the bottom. Just like that. We're gonna put all this red root floater in this one shrimp tank and just see how it does, and just kind of keep this other fish tank a little bit different. So the red root floater is gonna do really well in this tank. It's gonna clean the water really nice, and then the coverage or the foliage material here is actually gonna shade some of the plants below, which is okay because we've got this Anubias here. It doesn't really like the high light. And we've got some dwarf water lilies which send up their own sprouts to the top, so they won't really be fighting for any UV rays or any light or anything like that. All right, let's get them all in. I really enjoyed this red root floater. The red roots just stood out so nicely in this tank against that sort of orangish gravel, and yeah, they just worked out really well. This is week 17. The plants were doing fine, but an issue that I started to run into was the algae growth, and specifically this little hair algae. You guys can comment down below if I have that mixed up. In fact, anything in this video that you see that's wrong, please educate me, because this is all somewhat new to me. But fortunately, the black mollyfish did a really good job of cleaning up those plants. It would periodically eat the algae off of it. So what I did was dial back the amount of food I was feeding the fish. And you should do that anyways. I mean, you shouldn't really be feeding more than about, I don't know, once every other day. And in the beginning I was feeding daily, sometimes multiple times a day. And at this point I had added some LED plant lights, and so this algae was just kind of going crazy. So I also dialed back the lighting from 12 hours, which I learned is way too much, to about 7. Right here is a surprise that came along with the red root floater. It was a couple pieces of salvinia. This stuff I put in the fish tank on the left, and it just did so well. Here you can see the shrimp tank is doing really well. All of those plants except for the Anubias came from a pack of bulbs that I bought from the store, and they took about 6 weeks to sprout, and some of them even rotted underneath the gravel. So discovering those little rotted bulbs was huge because it was really souring the water. These are very small aquariums. The shrimp tank is actually only a 10-gallon, so water quality issues can arise. That's really why I wanted these floating plants. Here you can see some tiny baby shrimp. Our buried shrimp had finally hatched and had begun moving around the tank. Now at this point, these shrimp are very hard to see, so they could have even been in there for a week or two and I didn't notice. But right here, he's about 1 millimeter, maybe 2 millimeters. and he looks big compared to the snail, but the snail is very tiny. And these tiny little snails came off the plants and just started going crazy in the shrimp tank. I also had them in the fish tank, but I realized that the fish did a pretty good job of eating their eggs. However, the shrimp weren't doing the same thing. Here you can see another buried shrimp, so you can just tell within a few months you're going to have dozens and dozens of shrimp in here. I've even heard that you can start with 100 shrimp and get up to like 1,000 within 6 months. So if these things really go crazy, I'll end up putting them in a bigger tank. An issue that I ran into with the shrimp was this green algae that was living on the bottom side of it. But what I ended up doing was just euthanizing that shrimp, and I never had the problem again. Here I am rescuing an old tank that a friend had given me. She said I could have the tank if I was willing to clean it out. Alright, we're back at the house. I've got all the living live plants that were in that aquarium somehow surviving for so long. And we're gonna put them in this tank. So I have a slight concern just because the conditions that these were in were seemingly poor, but they were growing plants, so it couldn't have been that bad. Got these guys sucking out all the bad stuff in the water, and there wasn't any fish in there producing any waste. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put them in this planted aquarium. I only have 4 fish in here. Alright, so I think that's gonna be enough to start with. Didn't want to put too many just in case there was an issue. And the rest of these weren't looking as good. Some wilted leaves, or just like ones that didn't have very good root systems. So we'll see what happens. And that's the new tank, a 55 gallon. All right, here we are at week 20, and the systems here are finally established. My stem plants were growing well. As they grew, I would clip them off and bury the clippings in the soil, and those would grow up. The moneywort, I decided in hindsight, was not my favorite looking plant. I've seen them do really well in CO2 tanks that are set up with a CO2 drip to help the plants grow. This is just a low tech setup, so I've just got a heater, a filter, and a pretty regular light. A nice LED light that I actually got from Walmart. I'll show you that at the end of the video. I added in a few fish to help me out with the algae, including a baby plecostomus that you saw in that last shot. The Java fern was doing great. It was a bit of a risk putting it in this tank. I don't know what it could be harboring. This whole thing is a big experiment, and I had a lot of fun just figuring out as I went. The Ludwigia there, which is that red plant, was doing great. It was one of the stem plants that was a bit hardier, I found. And in the middle there you can see some Java moss, which started as just a couple tiny strands that turned into a pretty nice little clump. At this point I had added some nice new wood and switched out the main rocks for some lava rocks. Up here we've got the Salvinia doing great. It's multiplied like crazy. It was obviously pulling a lot of nutrients out of the water and just doing really well. And I like the look of it from the top. It has this sort of like spiky texture. But yeah, just had a lot of fun with these tanks. I don't know if I'm that happy with the hardscaping. I mean, it's pretty basic and it changed a lot as I went. You really have to resist changing it up too much. I mean, I was changing stuff on like a weekly basis, and it always caused some sort of issue that would present itself a week or two down the line. So when I added this second shrimp tank, that actually helped me out a lot, just, you know, focusing on another tank. So if you're having trouble with one tank, my suggestion is get another tank, and it'll sort of divert your attention. I would, you know, focus on the shrimp tank for a couple weeks, and I would notice that the fish tank would start to do really well just because I hadn't added anything to it or changed the routine. I mean, it's all about routine. These tanks take a lot of time to establish, and that's really why I wanted to make this video. You see a lot of videos on YouTube, and they're just these beautiful tanks that are set up within a couple days, but you don't see the whole process of like how everything starts and how it works out. Here you can see the shrimp are getting bigger, and there's even newer, smaller ones that have just hatched recently. You can see that smaller one on the right is about a third of the size of his brother. These are some of the products I was using, some cheap top fin 10-gallon filters. Did the job fine, and you can see I've got an 8-inch LED plant light. I actually got this from Walmart for 30 bucks, and it actually works out really, really well. So you don't have to spend a ton of money on this stuff. These are just some rescued tanks. I mean, people hear that I'm doing this and they want to have me take their tanks. This is Big Mama. She's going to be featured in a later video. I've also got a 3-toed box turtle in a planted terrarium. I'll also be doing a video on him because he needs a bigger tank. Thank you for watching, guys. I had a ton of fun making this video. Let me know down below in the comment section if you enjoyed it. I will see you next time.